Morning, everybody. Today is the 14th day in the month of April 2022. Happy Easter, everybody. So my name is Heritage. I just market analyst at HotForex. And quickly, we'll check through the market as usual, find out what the overall sentiment is, if it provides opportunities, and then how we can take advantage of it. But please remember that this is just a communication material, and nothing in this communication contains or should be considered as investment advice or investment recommendation. Users acknowledge that investment in FX and CFD products is characterized by a certain degree of uncertainty, and that any investment of this nature involves a high level of risk for which users are solely responsible and liable. What we have this morning in terms of the overall environment in the market, yeah, we started, more on the positive foot. We had, slight optimism to start the day, right? But generally, you notice that FX currencies are trading mixed. Most of those assets that traded higher are now starting to pay some of those gains, and it's tending towards more of a mixed environment again. And what has been the reason for the slight upside I was saying? Now, over the last couple of days, we've had bond yields see some downside on the back of high inflation numbers that has been in the US, but the one that came out on Tuesday was not as high as market participants expected, which spilled out talks for inflation reaching its peak, which means that the Fed might not have to go as fast as like they plan to. Saw yields come down a bit, saw US dollar come down a bit, saw equities push higher a bit, over the last 2-3 days. Now, apart from that, we also had one of the Federal Reserve members, that's Waller, Fed Waller. He said the inflation is also, pretty much the peak as well. Now, if that's the case, it's good because it could start to come down some more. The upside in yields we've seen over the last couple of days start to see some downside, and it could be a headwind for the US dollar. But that said, US dollar also weakened across board, lagging amongst the major FX. You look at the dollar index, moving lower as well, right? Equity futures pushing mostly higher across the board as I went, earlier in the day, right? At that time, early in the day was just the Kospi, 200 that was lower. Why? Because the Bank of Korea also hiked the interest rate by 25 basis points, surprisingly, right? But right now, over the last, few minutes now, we've seen most of these equities also, pair some of those gains and are having more of a mixed flow. The New Zealand dollar is strongest across board. First of all, we have, overall more positive vibe in the market. Apart from that, you also had that, a hike by the RBNZ. So market participants, the currency is starting to see, some strength after seeing initial downside, on the back of the meeting. But now some of those trends are coming back in and it's NZD strong. The AUD, on the other hand, is lagging, part of the laggards amongst the major FX. We had jobs data for Australia early in the day where it was a miss. Unemployment, rose from 3.9% to about 4%. New jobs added also was not as much as expected, although the numbers generally are not that bad. Yes, in line with expectations. Yes, it did not meet expectations, but you look at the jobs market in Australia, they're really at maximum employment so far. So there's that to pay attention to. So having said that, commodity prices generally too as well are not high on the day. So that obviously just puts some, calm in terms of, expectations for our upside in terms of high beta currencies generally. That said, the euro is also slightly supported. Later today, we're expecting the European Central Bank to have their meeting. And in the meeting, the markets generally are expecting to see a more hawkish tilt. Yes, they had a hawkish tilt in the last meeting where they talked about inflation. Over the last, couple of weeks after that, we've had tensions in Russia, Ukraine, all of that, right? Also, coming to the mix. But so far, markets are still expecting that, but don't forget that there's still lack of progress on the geopolitical side of things. There's still back and forth, negative reports coming from that end. So obviously, one to also worry about there. Equities that were mostly higher have started to retrace some of the moves. Oil prices are even lower on the day. Although you look at the moves in oil prices, they've been higher so far. So clearly, the moves you're seeing so far is just minor moves, not so much, more like pullbacks, more like slight breather, from the highs that we've seen created through the week. The VIX is also lower, just in line with upside in equities that we've seen so far. But the moves are rather large, so that's something to also pay attention to on the bond market, because we've seen downside in the bond market for the last couple of days and weeks now. Right. And then, right now, because of the peak inflation narrative out there, you're seeing yields pulling lower as well. You're seeing the bond downside also easing some more. So that is also something to also look out for. But in terms of looking at the FX, NZD leads the majors, then you have Euro supported. right? But now JPY is also there as well. Good because bond yields are coming down, so that supports the Japanese yen. Having said that, on the weaker side, you have the dollar, you have AUD pressure, you have CAD pressure as well. Lower oil prices also, weighing on the CAD there, and you see mostly mixed flows. Don't forget that we are heading into a long weekend, and tomorrow is Good Friday. We have Monday as Easter Monday as well, and most markets would be closed. So that means that we could have low liquidity, and it could lead to maybe high volatility or even very similar moves across board. And then today being the last full trading day of the week, it's possible that we have a lot of profit taking, a lot of de-risking, a lot of maybe could even see some choppy moves as well, right? In today's session. So you want to also be very watchful of what you have in today's session. But clearly, NZD is strong. Yes, you have that USD weak. You have that. You have this currency strong against the weaker ones. You have it on the screen here. But it's one of those days where you want to just be very patient. I don't think you want to really be head in diving into the market in line with all these moving parts that are not really aligning so far. Later today, the ECB meeting will be very interesting to pay attention to. But later today, we also expect, retail sales for the US, also that to pay attention to. Looking across the market space, you look at the equity space, for example. First of all, this is on the Asian side. We have that, slow down in terms of the moves that we've seen so far, but initial push to the upside, still keeping the gains. You look at the US side, we started a little bit up on the day, but now we've paid most of those upside. Yeah, we could look at it on a grander scale of things from yesterday. It's still higher. We look at the kind of swings that we've had over the last couple of sessions. So it's not really building so much confidence so far. You look at the US 30 as well. Yes, keeping the gains from yesterday, but heading into resistance like this, you look at this overall level here, there's just, yeah, a little bit big one here, but let's just even just note out this level. I mean, if you want to just look at this closer, you notice that we are really trading at this overhead resistance here around this, 34,500 level. So it just says, just be a little bit more patient. So far today, we've not really had so much in terms of continuation of the moves. The VIX itself has seen a floor coming from yesterday's session. But you look at the moves that we've had so far today, 14th of April, not so much to latch onto compared to how we started yesterday's session. Right. So clearly want to pay attention to the oil market has really just slowed into the session. Look at all week, starting from the lows we had on Monday, we kept pushing higher. Tuesday was a massive one. Wednesday continued higher. And now we've seen a little bit of highs going back to, this overhead resistance we had around, 4th or 5th of April. So there's also that to pay attention to. The move so far, yes, we could say, strength in some currencies, but because of the overall, mixed moves, it's a little bit tricky, trying to go into something new, right, for today's session. Having said that, you look at the dollar index, pressured in today's session, right, in line with downside in yields. But right now, we also found the flow as well. I also found the flow as well over the last couple of sessions. You look at, where we are trading right now. This is, an overall level around here. You have, the highs, the lows, really in this region. And then heading into such a weekend that we have so far, it may be a little bit just patience. I think it's a very good way to go about this. But if you want to look out for strength versus weakness so far, well, you could look at NZD versus, USD in line with the current environment, even though convictions for this are really low. But I mean, it's part of the options that we have. So we could look at that and look at, where we're trading right now. We broke above this daily pivot point I have on here. And look at that level as well, right? You can see more or less the lows going back to the 11th of April as well as the 12th of April. If we just try to note that out here a bit. Right, so clearly that's one. We could look out for further upside on this. This would only play out more if you have yields continue to push lower, right? If commodities start to pick up, that will be good for the NZD. If equities even resume their upside and even push higher some more, that will be good for the NZD. But in terms of convictions, I'm not really feeling, some of these moves that we're seeing so far today. I have this, particular one I wanted to just show us, the Euro AUD pair that we talked about a couple of on Monday. I think we talked about the Monday, and then on Tuesday we had what we were looking for. But I just want to just point one more thing out to us before we just quickly head out. All right, good. Now, we talked about this level where we said it was an interesting one to look out for coming back from the overall highs, right? Up from, let me clean this up a bit and see how, we can make this cleaner. All right. Now you look at this overall headline resistance coming from the early February thereabouts. Tested cleanly again around middle of March, again clean around late March as well, and we had one very nice closer reaction on Tuesday. I think that was Tuesday, right? This was Monday. I think yes, Monday. Then on Tuesday we're there as well. We pushed lower as well. Now we've come back to that level yesterday as well. But now that we are, I really like this. I want to see further downside on this particular asset. But now that we are already clearing at this level, I want to be a lot more patient here. I don't want to see, the ECB is a big risk in this particular one. So I don't want to also see jumping selling here. This is a technical, breakout that you want to also be very, very watchful about. If this continues higher, it could even use this as a bounce and a push higher if we have a hawkish ECB in today's session. So very, 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 very watchful one there, in terms of today's session. Having said that, on the calendar, it's really, really a light one. But when we say light, doesn't mean there are no key events. But from the ECB meeting, despite the fact that we're expecting, a more hawkish meeting generally, nothing is expected to change in terms of the rate side. And then we don't expect so much in terms of changing their language, particularly. So there's that. US retail sales is also there to pay attention to. Although the numbers from the core side, right, we're expecting better numbers across board, right? But having said that, excluding these X autos, multiple months, print, but we're expecting better numbers. But I don't think this should even change, the Federal Reserve's hawkish stance that we have so far, or even reduce it. But whichever the print is, we like to see that. Apart from that, we're also expecting consumer confidence, consumer sentiment, right, from the University of Michigan in the US as well. So there's also that to pay attention to. But I don't expect so much changes on the back of this. We could get profit taking, we could get choppy action in this session, we could get mixed flows as well. So please, in today's session, just be watchful, mindful, and then, trade safely. So that's it for now. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I would always do our best to help. Thank you, and do enjoy the rest of the trading session as well as the holidays and the weekend ahead. Thank you. Goodbye.